Night isn't just darkness. It's the hour when quiet places remember what they've seen. If you're listening, the halls, the elevators, and the empty rooms will talk back. Welcome to Midnight Reddit, true stories that don't sleep. Turn down the lights, hit subscribe if you love scary stories, and share your own in the comments. I work as a nurse at a hospital in the UK that was thrown together during World War II as a temporary facility. It never went away. It just kept getting built onto until it became a slightly modernized maze. One winter night on a late shift, we admitted a patient with an infection, alert and oriented. Around 2 or 3 in the morning, she started screaming from her side room. Another nurse and I ran in. She insisted a man with a bag over his head had been standing at the foot of her bed, watching. I tried to calm her, but as we stepped out, I felt the atmosphere change. We both saw a shadowy figure pass through a set of double doors tucked in an alcove outside the room, doors that are always locked and require a key. There wasn't enough time for anyone to unlock them, slip through, and lock them again. We looked at each other and understood what that meant. That hospital has its share of stories. This is one of 3 I've had there in 5 years. I work part-time security at an outpatient facility. Most months it's 6 shifts, usually quiet. I do bi-hourly rounds in 12-hour blocks, check locks, document anything unusual. Some nights it's 2 nurses and a couple of patients. About every few months I'm alone guarding the building. There are 2 stories people always mention. A patient who died unexpectedly at the end of a corridor. The door there keeps closing no matter how often I leave it open. And a nurse who lost her son after surgery. She swore she felt him in the room where he passed. I've seen a shadow in that room move from one corner to another. Then the stranger things piled up. In the break room one night, I heard furniture drag across tile and watched a chair slide 1.5 feet by itself. On rounds another time, a white shrouded figure stood in a doorway 5 feet away. I dropped my keys and flashlight, stumbled, looked back. Empty hall. The worst was the storage room in the center. The light switch is in the middle. When you shut it off, you have to cross the room in darkness. I killed the lights and felt someone lean close and whisper in my ear. Shh. Air moved against my skin. I jumped into the hall, shined my light. Nothing. I tucked a small figure of the Virgin Mary and a medal under a shelf. That room has been quiet since. Elsewhere, it's still knocks, footsteps, and a presence more than one of us has felt. Years ago, I interned at a NYC recording studio on an upper floor you couldn't reach by elevator unless we buzzed you up. Cameras watched the front door, the elevator entrance, and the elevator interior. On an overnight with just me and another guy, we heard the elevator moving around 3:30 a.m. The building was empty after early evening. We checked the cameras. No one in the elevator. Maybe someone called it from another floor, we thought, until it stopped at ours and dinged. The door slid open, empty, and then stayed open far longer than the usual 5 seconds, as if something blocked the sensor. After 20 or 30 seconds, they closed, and the car returned to the lobby. The next day, someone else told us the exact same thing had happened to him in the middle of the night. Maybe a malfunction. It felt wrong. My wife worked night shift in a palliative care unit. Those rooms had radios. Every so often, a radio would switch on by itself, and within the hour, someone would pass. One busy night, a radio snapped on. She walked in, looked into the dark, and said, "Cut that out. I don't have time for this." The radio clicked off. No one passed during her shift. Someone did shortly after she clocked out. I don't inherently believe in ghosts, but I work in a busy ER as a healthcare assistant, and part of my job is post-mortem care. One night around 2 a.m., an older palliative patient passed. The family said goodbye, and I went in to remove tubes and monitors, give a bed bath, put on a gown and shroud, and set aside valuables. I always talk to my patients, even after they've passed. In the middle of the bed bath, I felt a presence and a warm hand rest on my shoulder. A man's voice said, "Thank you." The hand lingered, then everything lifted and the room felt empty. No staff were nearby. I choose to believe it was gratitude. Night watch in the barracks at Fort Gordon changed my mind. I was by the second-floor stairwell when a shout came from down the hall. I ran in, ready to break up a fight. Several people were pointing at ceiling tiles, saying someone lifted them at night and made faces. The latrine was behind the wall. I checked, empty. I climbed onto a desk and lifted a tile. A cinder block wall sat an inch behind it, floor to ceiling. No space for a face. 2 soldiers grabbed their things, ran out, and slept in the hall. It was only the first of many incidents. I worked a 24-hour sandwich shop. Around 3:30 a.m., washing dishes while my coworker cleaned the ovens, the door chime rang. I turned the corner, said welcome, out of habit. No one there. I figured my coworker went for a smoke. Back at the sink, the chime rang again. I checked the bathrooms. Empty. I stood at the counter watching the door. My coworker came in through the back. He'd been taking out trash. The chime rang. He said, welcome, turned the corner. No one. This time the front door stood wide open. Our doors are weighted to close by themselves. We stared for minutes until it suddenly slammed. It wasn't windy. Later we checked the cameras with the boss. No explanation. I ran projection booths at a theater. After the last show in each auditorium, you shut off lights one by one, and the corridor gets darker and quieter. One night I covered a platter and glanced up at the window across the hall into the theater. A little boy's face stared back, sheet white. Those windows sit 8 to 10 feet above the highest row. You'd need a ladder with nowhere to put it. I don't know what it was. I know what I saw. A friend worked third shift as a custodian in an elementary school from the 1940s. At first it was lights turning on in rooms he darkened, cabinets and doors opening and closing. Then doors slammed. He heard children playing, then screaming. Trash cans flipped. Objects flew in empty hallways. He rushed through his tasks, then sat in an office facing the door until morning. The last straw was someone grabbing his chair from behind and flipping him backward when he was alone. He called his boss, quit, and returned the keys the next day. Years later, he learned the school had an indoor pool. After several drownings in the early years, they filled it with concrete and built over it. I worked the front gate at a military installation. Nights were quiet. More than once, a dark green old Ford Bronco rolled up and did a 180 the moment I stepped from the shack. It happened a few times. One night I caught the plate and ran it. My supervisor asked if I was sure. I was. He said it matched a crash report. That same vehicle and plate, totaled, driver deceased. I asked for day shift. In a northern Ontario mine on the 4,200 level, a narrow drift running for kilometers, there had been a fatality a couple of years earlier. One midnight, mine rescue rushed past and we followed. We found a man pale and shaking, uninjured but screaming with a terror that didn't sound human. Then he stopped and sat, awake but not responsive. On the way out hours later, he kept repeating, "The devil is on 42." 2 years later, the same thing happened in the exact spot to a different person. I don't think they saw the devil. I still remember it on 42. At a restaurant where a cook had been shot during a robbery before my time, I'd hear spatulas clank in an empty kitchen. I saw a black figure in back once and assumed it was the cook. When I walked to the front, he was outside smoking and there were no orders on the board. Other co-workers had their own experiences. One said she felt pushed. I can only tell you what I saw and heard. I worked night shift at a hotel while holding a day job. The manager let me sleep if I woke for guests. One night I woke to a tall silhouette peering through the Dutch door windows from the courtyard, maybe 6.5 feet, black trench coat and hat. I rushed to the door. He was gone, with nowhere to run without being seen. Weeks later, a coworker told me about an evil spirit in one of the rooms and described a tall figure in a black coat and hat. I finished his description. He went pale. At another job around 3:15 a.m., I headed out for rounds, whistling a tune from the radio. From the bushes on a 60-foot cliff, that same tune answered back in the same airy whistle I have. I froze, got in the car, and left. Sometimes if I fell asleep there, I'd wake to my old boss shouting my name. He'd been dead 3 years. In Bowmanville, Ontario, I worked hospital security in a facility split between an old late 1800s wing and a newer one. Turning into a long corridor by the old main entrance where wheelchairs are stored, I saw a woman at the far end. Long blue-button coat, black shoes, a kind of winged bowler hat. She scared me so much I closed my eyes a moment. When I looked again, she was gone. Days later, I passed a wall of historical photos near the new entrance. In a picture from the original opening, the same woman stood among nurses in white, a head nurse by the look of it. That photo made my stomach drop. I worked in a bar that used to be part of the funeral directors next door. The welcome slab out front still had the old name and year. Closing meant one of us downstairs counting tills and the other upstairs cleaning. One night, polishing the taps, I saw a figure behind me in the reflection. I spun around, no one, and texted my co-worker to come up. Before the message even sent, she called out from 2 floors down. She said she heard me running up and down stairs when I hadn't moved. The building had oddities. 2 staircases that led nowhere, an iron door in the wine cellar with a wheel now blocked by racks, and in the ladies' room, a boarded window over a sharp drop into some underground alley. After closing one night, someone dared a co-worker to jump down into that space. She did and came up shaken, saying it felt like a hand had wrapped around her forearm. In college, I worked 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. and would run home to eat mid-shift. I lived on the top floor of an 11-story high-rise from the 1920s with a haunted reputation. When it happened, it always started the same way. The elevator stopped on the 7th floor and opened to an empty hallway. Then, instead of going to the lobby, it dropped to the basement, a level requiring a key, and opened on a long, dim corridor with green lights at the far end. The air felt wrong. I'd squeeze my eyes shut until the doors closed and carried me back up. Later, I read the building's history. In the early years, several prostitutes were found dead in the basement. I started to wonder if something was getting in on 7. I lived for a time on the grounds of an 18th century historic home and museum tied to a founding father. A few of us had houses there, so someone was always on site. One night, the alarm company called definite break-in. No alarm on entry, but 4 motion detectors had tripped in sequence upstairs. Police came. 2 stayed outside while 2 went in with me. They cleared from the basement up while I checked the system. We met on the 1st floor at the foot of the main stairs. Flashlights aimed up at a chair set on the edge of the top step. That chair belonged in the first room on the left, the room between the triggered detectors and the top of the stairs. One officer said he wasn't going up because nothing on his belt worked on ghosts. The other cleared the 2nd floor. I moved the chair back. We wrote it up as maybe a raccoon. The museum director read the report the next day and asked if it had felt very cold at the top of the stairs. It had. I'm a dedicated night shift nurse who spent time in the oldest part of a century-old hospital. Our unit closed for a couple of months for mold and rumored asbestos, and we were shuffled around. A co-worker with a ghost hunting kit talked me into checking our old rooms when construction isolation came down. Utilities were off. The silence was absolute. In a room near the nurses' station where many deaths had occurred, we set a voice recorder, thermometer, and EMF detector, and asked simple questions. The temperature dropped a few degrees. The EMF chattered. I asked, "Are you angry you died here?" And the EMF squealed. We left fast. The next morning we played the audio. You could hear our questions and the EMF. Right when I asked that last question, a low, drawn-out moan rolled through, like a death rattle, amplified. The file was lost when my laptop was stolen in 2014. I still remember the goosebumps. My first overnight job was as a train dispatcher in a century-old Vermont station. Around 4 a.m. on day 6 of a long stretch, I saw a man in his 40s in semi-formal clothes standing by the restrooms. Later, I worked at a mental health crisis house, A home-like setting, a step below inpatient. One room gave everyone bad feelings. During checks, I felt watched. Other night staff reported stomping upstairs, voices, and sudden temperature drops. That room had the highest rates of self-harm and emergency transfers. People from different spiritual backgrounds, Kabbalah, Santeria, Catholic, New Age, picked up on it without being told. I tried sage and salt and even banging pots. The stomping got worse during my shifts. On nights with no clients, I'd nap on the couch and started having more lucid dreams and sleep paralysis after trying to chase it out. I'm in law enforcement. My partner and I were sent to a new alarm activation at a house far off the road. No lights, webs everywhere, nothing outside like trash cans. We split the perimeter. Ground level was a carport and a locked shop. Upstairs was a huge covered porch with several sets of wicker furniture. Looking through the sliding doors, the interior looked frozen in the 1960s. Old carpet, no TV, no electronics. Dispatch said the activation was attic exit. I looked up and saw an attic hatch on the porch ceiling with alarm sensors. We joked about rock, paper, scissors. I lost. I climbed up enough to see no one, but the smell was strong, like the scent of old age soaked in for decades. We left and made light of it. A mile away, driving separately, I caught a glimpse of a woman in the roadway. Dark clothing, light bag. I waited to see if my partner saw it too. Seconds later, he radioed that we were stopping with a person in the road. We turned around within 20 seconds. She was gone. We compared notes. We saw the same thing. Another unexplained incident followed in the weeks after, and we decided whatever we'd stirred up had followed us out. What about you? Have you ever experienced something strange in the dark? Midnight fades, but the stories don't. See you next time on Midnight Reddit.